Good morning, all. Ailsa, just to let you know, we are at quorum at this point in time.
Thanks very much, Meg. Hi, everybody. I think we'll get started then because we've got the non-exciting bit of the morning, which is the AGM, to get through first. So thanks so much for everybody for joining us. And then we've got a super interesting session starting at 11, which Agnes Rennie is going to be leading around community landowners and cultural heritage. So I'm sure that's what most of you are here for. So thank you for bearing with us while we go through the AGM business. For those of you that don't know me, I'm Ailsa Rayburn. I'm chair of Community Land Scotland. I'm also chair of the Isle of Egg Heritage Trust, and I think that's the delivery man arrived, so that's the dogs barking, so apologies for that. Hopefully they won't go on too long. Anyway, it's lovely to see so many of you here today. I've got a couple of apologies for the meeting. Margaret Nicholson and Bridie Ashrowen. So thanks to them for sending their apologies through. First order of business is approval of the minutes of the AGM, which we held 27th of October last year. They were sent out to you as part of the instructions for the meeting with the first email that Meg sent. So I'm going to see if anyone's got any questions on those and get Meg or Lindsay to find an approver and a seconder for them, because I've got my agenda slide up so I can't see everybody on. So if someone would approve them and someone would second them, that would be great, please. Thank you. Have we got approvers and seconders, Meg?
I'm not seeing anything yet. Would anyone like to approve? David is approving. David Cameron. Anyone seconding? You can just come on mic if you'd like to second.
Happy to second, Meg.
Thanks, Agnes.
Thank you, Agnes.
So I've got the joy of presenting both the chair's report and the treasurer's report today. So sorry, you're going to hear me passing on for about 10 minutes because John Todd has had to send his apologies. I think Meg will have sent out to you the members report. So you'll have had an indication of all the things that have been going on with CLS over the last year or so. So the first, as you know, we've got three sort of main areas of work. The support and promotion work, which Lindsay leads up together with Meg and Emma, supported by Luke, our new administrator. We have the community hub in Glasgow and the Clyde Valley, which Carey and Heather work on, and we have the policy team, which Josh is working on at the moment, and we've also got our new PR and comms coordinator, Norrie McLennan, and we've recently been joined by Merit, who's helping us out with events. So we've got quite a broad team now, and this is some of the work they've been involved in the period subject to this particular AGM. So that's 22-23. So the first picture here we've got on the left is our really successful Gaelic Communities Fund project and the gathering at the end of the event in Razay. So the Communities Fund project, which was funded by Bordna Gaelic, provided support and grants to 10 community trusts for Gaelic use pilots. And in October 2022, we held a gathering for the communities that participated in the programme so that they could share learning. And then we held an open webinar in December 2022. The project came to an end finally in February 2023, and we've published a series of case studies on the findings from that particular project. And in spring 2023, Bordna Gaelic published a really positive evaluation of the impact of the project in terms of learning around Gaelic use. So that was great to see that independent evaluation of the work, of course, Community Land Scotland, but mainly the work of our members in promoting Gaelic in their communities. The second picture in the middle is our conference this year at Salmorosteg. We were lucky enough to go back to Salmorosteg this year, and as you see, the sun shone as usual, but during the year we had a really successful urban conference in Edinburgh, where we had a number of key speakers, and that was really well attended. The other projects that we undertook, support and promotion projects during the year, we ran a slimmed down community land week with 17 communities taking part. This year we're about to hugely boost that. We're up to about 45 communities, which Meg will probably confirm, and that starts next week. So that's 45 communities across all of Scotland. We also rolled out our education project called The Quest, which now has resources for both secondary and primary schools. It was rolled out to additional rural schools, and then during the year we created a new version particularly for urban areas, and that version focused on community buyouts of urban buildings and vacant and derelict land. Just a reminder that the primary school resources are on our website. So if you've got any schools in your communities that want to download them, then hopefully that's easy to do on the website. But do get in touch with Lindsay or Meg if you've got any queries, particularly about the education project. We've also, during the year, ran lots of Meet the Pioneers webinars, which is what's following this particular AGM. And during the year, it was on owning heritage assets, landscape scale, ecological restoration, and community ownership in villages. So a really broad spectrum of different topic types which our members are interested in. We also ran a number of study visits during the year, including to the Outer Hebrides, to Ettrick and Yarrow Community Development Company for communities in South Scotland, and then trips to Action 40 and North Edinburgh Arts in the run up to the conference. We had the urban gathering, which was really well attended up in Stirling, and in the south of Scotland. We're continuing to provide support to communities in the south of Scotland, but the specific project we had there to kickstart the development of the network funded by South Scotland Enterprise has come to an end. We also delivered 6 training courses of issues of real importance to members around things like strategic planning and recruiting and managing staff. So another really busy year. Thanks again to Lindsay and Meg and all the team for all the work they've done in supporting our members and promoting community ownership through the year. Move on, please, Meg. Okay, so the Community Ownership Hub, Glasgow and Clyde Valley, we're coming to the end of the first 3 years of this particular project, and great thanks to our funders for that, Scottish Government, Tudor Trust and William Grant Foundation. By the end of year 2, which is the end of this particular year, the hub had engaged with 87 communities, much higher than the original 20 that we'd forecast in the business plan. 71% of those communities were from resource deprived areas, which equates to 20% of the most deprived areas according to SIMD data. And the majority of inquiries that we've been dealing with through the hub has been about land currently owned by private landowners. So these are the real sort of knotty issues, where who owns it, what they're doing with it, why it's vacant and derelict, how you engage with owners, how you even identify owners. Those have all been really massive issues for a lot of communities this year, and I'm really pleased to say that the hub has been working with various organisations, including now the King's Lords and Treasurers Remembrance on projects to identify ownership land and how ownership land can be dealt with. At the moment, we're just in the evaluation stage of the end of the first 3 years of the hub, and that contract for evaluation has been let, and we're putting together proposals for Hub Mark II and where that's likely to go and what the business plan will look like. So more information on that soon. The other work that Carey in particular has been doing through the Hub project, which is, as you may recall, it's an action research project, which basically means that we take the evidence that comes from the communities and use that to inform policy. So there's been a lot of work around ensuring that urban issues are included in the land reform bill, and that we're engaging with policymakers and legislators on that. Thanks, Meg. So turning now to policy work, great thanks to Callum MacLeod, who left us during the year, but was a huge support to Community Land Scotland and really helped move the debate and the narrative on. And since then, we've obviously welcomed our new policy manager, Dr. Josh Doble, who some of you will know and hopefully have met. He's supremely busy on trying to ensure that the land reform bill is as ambitious as we would all like to see it. And he's also very busy on issues like community benefit and ensuring that natural capital and renewables are able to contribute to local communities, as well as issues of green finance. And many of you will see in the recent reports that we've done with Alistair McIntosh and John Hollingdale on that. And so during the 22-23 year, it was a really busy period in terms of responding to the Land Reform Bill consultation and supporting members to do the same, but also developing ideas around changing community rights to buy, which we're hopeful of getting some purchase, and issues like the public interest test. During the year, we also produced some hopefully influential reports around community wealth building and a just transition to net zero by Laurie McFarlane and Miriam Brett, and again work by John Hollingdale, which really contributed to the debate. We're continuing to raise awareness of the need for more urban land reform, and during the year we also produced a vision for community-led urban housing in Scotland. Another area of our work is around rural repopulation and rural housing, and we gave several sessions of evidence to the Housing, Local Government and Planning Committee on NPF4, on short-term legislation and on repopulation. So again, hugely busy in policy terms, and that's only going to increase over the next wee while as the Land Reform Bill comes to Parliament. So that's the chair's update. I'm going to go back to Meg now and see if we've got the Cabinet Secretary's video to play, and we'll do that and then move on to the Treasurer's report. Is that okay, Meg?
It is, yes. Let me just pull this over for us.
Thank you.
I'm Mary Goujon, the Cabinet Secretary for Rural Affairs, Land Reform and Islands, and I'm delighted to welcome you to this year's Community Land Scotland AGM and to Community Land Week 2023. First of all, though, I just want to say thank you to all the community groups taking part in this year's event, and a special thanks to all the individual volunteers who make it happen. The first Community Land Week took place in 2018. Its aim is to raise the profile of community land ownership nationally and focus on community land. Community Land Week is also a really important opportunity to promote and raise awareness of assets, activities and projects of community landowners at a national, regional and local level. Community ownership is such a powerful tool that can bring huge benefits to not only the local community, but often to the country as a whole. Whether it's through the provision of vital local services or contributing to net zero goals, we know that communities can make a real difference if they are given that opportunity. This is a fantastic chance for the public to see the wide variety of assets that communities have taken on, many with grants from our Scottish Land Fund. The public can also see the innovative projects that are making such a big difference to communities the length and breadth of Scotland. The community groups taking part can showcase their projects with pride, and those attending the events will be able to discuss with the community groups their own ownership journey. I hope that these projects will go on to inspire others to take forward community land ownership projects in their own communities. We remain committed to the introduction of a further land reform bill by the end of 2023, as set out in the Butte House Agreement and as the First Minister highlighted in the new programme for government. This new bill aims to further improve transparency of land ownership and help to ensure large-scale land holdings deliver in the public interest. It will add to existing rights and opportunities that communities have to own land and to have more say in how land in their area is used. The consultation on the bill held last year received around 540 responses, which are available online. And we've also published an independent analysis of the responses, which showed that a majority of respondents agreed with many of our ambitious proposals for land reform. Community Land Scotland and the Scottish Land Fund have helped many community groups bring their visions to life for owning and creating local assets. We are committed to doubling the Scottish Land Fund budget to £20 million by 2026. And this additional funding should allow many more communities across Scotland to benefit from community ownership. I hope that this event will help to facilitate visits and exchanges between aspiring and existing community landowners, with the aim of encouraging new ventures and inspiring people from all over Scotland.
Thanks, Meg. That's great. Yeah, so we're all looking forward to the Land Reform Bill. We're all spending a huge amount of time thinking about the Land Reform Bill. Right, I'll move on now then. We've got some new members this year. Actually, we've been really overwhelmed by the number of new members we had during the year, 17. From right across the country, and the pictures here, Sanka on the left, and then Galgal, that many of you will know, Creative Stirling, and the fantastic redevelopment project that North Edinburgh Arts are undertaking in Edinburgh. So these are 4 really inspiring new members, but we have new members for CLS from Aberfeldy, and lots of you will know what's happening around Taymouth and Glen Lyon, which is in the Aberfeldy Development Trust area, up in Dunvegan at Skye, down in Prestwick, close to home for me, Tavialic Initiative, and up in Thurso. So our membership's growing, and importantly, it's growing right across the country in both urban and rural areas. So move on now to the Treasurer's report, and John Todd, who's our new Treasurer, sends his apologies. And can I also apologise for the lateness of these accounts being sent out to you? So I'm going to go through them in a wee bit of detail because I do need them approved and seconded. They're in the new format that most of you will be used to, now called Charities Report. We're still getting used to it, certainly getting used to the terminology, because it's set out very differently from how it was set out previously. But what is useful about the new sets of accounts, it does allow you that comparative approach, which allows us to look at trends over time. So we thought it would be useful to just show how the income has grown in the last 6 or 7 years for Community Land Scotland, and that's obviously an indication of how funders in particular have been more willing to support an extension of the work of CLS. We've also had some quite big projects. Obviously, we talked about the Bord na Gaelic project already. We had a big National Lottery Community Fund post-COVID project, and obviously we've had great funding for our hub work as well. What the comparative approach does allow us to do is to sort of identify short and long-term risks for CLS. So it enables us to look at those trends and think where there may be risk to the business in the future. So what we are doing at the moment is developing a risk management register, and that will look at things like sort of in-year finance and cash flow management, long-term financial sustainability of the organisation, what happens if we lose key staff, issues around policy and what some of the risks are there, and then some of the things that you'll all be really conscious of, things like IT and financial fraud, and making sure that we've got the right sort of systems and processes in place for that. Thanks, thanks, Meg. Next slide, please. So here it's just some headline figures around income and expenditure. Income has dropped because of those 2 projects, Bord na Gaelic and the South of Scotland project finishing. Expenditure was within income, so that was great. We didn't need to dip into the reserves at all for support and operational expenditure. We have a really tight control of expenditure by all our staff, and very regular finance meetings to ensure that we're on top of all of that. As you would expect, the mass majority of expenditure for us is in wages. We did manage to keep our reserves at a reasonably healthy level, just under £50,000 at year end. There was a slight reduction on the previous year because the board agreed to keep up the momentum around things like Land Reform Bill and policy development. In between the 2 Esme Fairburn grants, we would actually use some of our reserves to continue that work, and we actually used that to pay for some of Callum's time, and also to commission Laurie McFarlane and Miriam Brett. So but anyway, we've kept them at a reasonably healthy level, not quite where we want them to be, but certainly better than they've been in previous years. We had a good number of restricted funds carried forward, and that's principally around the hub, because it's a 3-year programme. And you'll see cash at bank at the end of the year was a pretty healthy position. Thanks, Meg. Next slide. So we have a really good range of funders, and again want to thank all of the funders for their support. Scottish Government is our principal funder, funding operational support work, and also the Glasgow and Clyde Valley Hub. ESME funds our policy work. Scottish Community Alliance funds visits for communities and information sharing. Came to the end of the National Lottery Communities Fund, which was our Resilient Communities project. Bord na Gaelic I've spoken about. South Scotland Enterprise supported us to start developing a network of communities that could share learning in the south of Scotland. William Grant and Tudor Trust are our two hub funders, and then thanks again to Highlands and Isles Enterprise, who supported us with some work around second homes and planning, and also our conference. So we couldn't do it without them, so thanks very much. Then next slide please, Meg. Detail which you'll all see in the accounts that have been sent out to you. Just reference page 12. It shows what each of the funders have given to us over the year and how we spent it. And then pages 16 and 17 are key points to note on expenditure. Our current staffing position is we've got 5 full-time staff and 4 part-time staff. But many of those are actually project staff rather than core staff. But we've got a really great staff team, and we're continuing to develop that as new projects come online. Next slide, please, Meg. So in conclusions, we're hoping to launch, and Lindsay's said I can't say a word about it. Some of you will know what we're talking about, but actually we're about to start a major new project towards the end of this year, which means it will probably exceed the audit limit this year, which is £500,000. So that will result in us providing quite different accounts to you next year once we start that project. I've already mentioned that we're at a pretty healthy reserves level at the minute, but we're not quite meeting our reserves policy, which is 3 months of staffing costs, but we're working towards that. And finally, on the Treasurer's report, I'd like to thank John Watt, our outgoing Treasurer, who's still a great source of advice and is happy to listen to me moan on for ages about accounts. All of you will know what accounts are like. But welcome to John Todd, who's our incoming Treasurer, and John just joined us this year, and he's a chartered accountant. It's been hugely helpful in helping us as the business grows. And thanks also to our bookkeeper, Jacqueline at Engage Renfrewshire, and Jean Ainsley, who's our accountant. So thanks. Any questions on the Chair's or Treasurer's report? So I know that's always a quick run through, but I am conscious of time. But Meg, can you keep an eye out to see if there's any questions, please?
Will do.
And just while we're doing that, is anybody happy to approve and second the accounts, please? Again, don't be shy. John Watt is happy to approve. Can we have a seconder?
I'm happy to approve them, Ilse.
Oh, brilliant. Thank you so much. That's great. Right. Okay, I will move on. We don't have any directors nominated by members, but we do have a number of directors who have stepped down this year. So I'd like to thank Morven Gibson, Martin Avila, Lincoln Richford, and Magnus Davidson, who have all stepped down. Hugely helpful to us all. Great sounding boards. And I'd like to welcome John Todd, who I've already mentioned, Grace Murray from Stow in the south of Scotland, Kate Wimpress from Edinburgh, and Bridie Ashrowen from Edinburgh. So we've got a really strong board that are great support to the staff team and to myself. We've also got some really sad news about one of our directors to announce, who's stepping down, a face that will be incredibly familiar to everybody. And I had a long conversation with David yesterday and decided I couldn't possibly do the vote of thanks today. So I'm going to pass on to Agnes Rennie, who's going to do that on behalf of Community Land Scotland. Thanks, Agnes.
Thanks very much. Ailsa, I can't say that you've exactly challenged me with an easy task today, but it is a very, very pleasant task. So this will not be long, David, but hopefully it might just reflect how we've got on over the years. It's when I read Ailsa's message yesterday, I thought, wow, this has been quite a few years since we first met down in Tarbert, and you very kindly hosted us in the Harris Hotel to have a meeting where we were, all of us from the various then trusts, which were largely, mostly in fact, North and West, thinking, something's not working here. Something really is not working here. And some of these trusts had been working, operating for a few years. Some had not. Some had just very recently got off the ground. And yet it seemed that the infrastructure, fairly fragile though it was, that had been there, seemed to be in great danger of disappearing. And what on earth were we going to do? Not just what we were going to do for ourselves, but I think significantly how we were going to make sure that other communities would be able to take advantage of what we'd taken advantage of. And you very much led on taking that process forward, and you've been with it ever since. That first very tentative meeting, and probably there were some hard words said, and I'm sorry if some colleagues were in the line of fire that day. It wasn't personal, it wasn't intended. You know who you are, I'm not going to name names, but the result was good, because out of that very, very first meeting, where essentially I think it was a case of just kind of airing our disgruntlement with everyone. And that went everywhere from local government, high, to Scottish government. And we thought, what on earth is going on? But out of it came this organisation, which we have today, which is Community Land Scotland. And you have been part of this organisation from that day. In fact, I think it's right to say that you and Mary, your wife, have been very, very much part of what had made this organisation what it is, because your contribution went far beyond just being a member of the board. And we very much absolutely appreciate Mary's help on the financial side and that too, and recognise that today. But I think, you know, to have gone from that first meeting to a very tentative bit of money that led to a graduate placement, who you worked with mostly, and there was a bit of travelling and a bit of understanding of trying to understand what was going on and what was it these members wanted. And out of that, we have the team that we are supported by and surrounded by today. You've been very much at the heart of this. You've done it not by shouting at people. I've been on the same side of the table as you at meetings where, honestly, I don't believe people realised that they were being persuaded to sign a cheque, because that's often what came out of it. And sometimes it seemed that we left the room not really having moved much further on, but actually we had. And a very good example of that was the creation of Community Land Outer Hebrides. It's, to all intents and purposes, it's a very local grouping of those trusts in the Hebrides. But you recognised, as did others, that for those different areas have different needs. And as this organisation grew and as the scope of Community Land Scotland grew, so there was a need to address some of the more local things. And so we have Community Land Outer Hebrides today. But the other thing that we have, and this meeting today, this AGM, very much reflects that, is that no longer are we talking about community land being simply something weird that's happening in the North and West and in the islands. This is a movement, a community-led movement, which is now to be found right across Scotland, in rural areas, in cities, and still here in the North. Now, you're leaving today, our board, and personally, I'm very sad about that. I know that board colleagues and everybody in this room will be very sad about that too. But I also know that you're not walking away from the task, David. I know that you being you will not just be keeping an eye from a distance and checking that it's being done the right way, but that also you'll be keeping an eye for opportunity, because it's all about opportunity. And I think going forwards, we and you can safely say that what we've achieved and dreamt of that day in Harris is way beyond what we might have voiced that day. Jim Hunter, in his usual style that day, was provocative. And of course, it seemed that next step wouldn't be just the Highlands and Islands, it wouldn't just be the cities. Who knew where we would stop? All we really wanted was to make sure that the opportunity continued, and the opportunity has continued. It is continuing. The road is still a big road ahead of us, but thank you very much, David, for everything you have done as a friend and as a colleague. And don't forget that hot chocolate when next we meet.
Brilliant, Agnes. So much more articulate than I could have been, but I know we'll all thank David, and he said he really did not want to speak today, and I quite understand that. But he looks like he's got his hand up. He might want to speak. Go for it, David.
Yeah. Yes, it's for those who don't know Agnes as well as I do, she is prone to a lot of exaggeration, and what she's just said perhaps proves the point. Very briefly, Ailsa, because I'm aware that the time is passing for the next part, but I just want to say very, very briefly, it's been a privilege and it's been a pleasure to have been allowed to serve with Community Land Scotland for these 14 years. And just want to take this opportunity to thank people who've been on the same journey over that time. The board, the staff, the supporters and friends, and of course you would expect me to say the members, the foundation of this organisation. Moran Tag. Thank you.
Well done, David. Thanks so much for that. And there was no exaggeration in Agnes's, particularly not around his powers of persuasion, as I know to my own cost. But it's been just fabulous working with you, David. And I know where you are. We'll know where to find you when we need your particular skills of charm and charisma to get those knotty problems unknotted. So anyway, thank you for that, Agnes, and thank you again, David, on behalf of the board for all you've done over the years. I'm just going to finish off now with a quick any other competent business from anyone. Meg, can you just see if anyone's got their hand up?
No hands up that I can see.
Okay, brilliant. Well, we'll close the AGM there on a sad but happy note, and lovely to see so many of you. And I'm now going to pass over to Agnes, who's going to be chairing our Meet the Pioneers event celebrating land heritage. Thanks everyone for taking the time today to come to the AGM. We really appreciate it. Over to you, Agnes. Thank you.